Hello, everybody. I'm Sean Reynolds from Sportsnet, about to be joined by Ken Weibe from Sportsnet, who just doesn't want to take his job seriously. He's down lounging in the sun, just taking it easy, still down in the desert, enjoying his time, leaving Renny up here to do all the work, asking all the questions. It's a good thing I'm good at asking those questions because we got some great stuff from the guys after the game. After a very, very interesting game, hey, if you can't hold 1 4-goal lead, why not take another one? That's what the Winnipeg Jets' philosophy was on this night as they came firing out of the gates, absolutely hyped up as they were playing the Montreal Canadiens, took that 4-goal lead, and then we're starting to think, are they going to pull another Colorado Avalanche game like they had the other day? Seemed like they were going down that path. I thought personally that as soon as Josh Anderson scored that hat trick goal to tie the game up, the Jets just kind of seemed to entirely shift. All of a sudden, they were standing up the Canadiens at their blue line, weren't allowing them to gain access, really kind of turned things around. And then clearly on this night, the difference maker was the special teams. My goodness. I'll say this about the Montreal Canadiens. You have to admire, and I think this is the stuff that we were hearing about Marty St. Louis coached Montreal Canadiens team, that, they got a lot of guts. They like to play with pace. They look like they're having a good time. There's a lot of belief. So I think the effort level that you saw was there. But I'll tell you this, Marty St. Louis as a coach seems to have come in grossly underprepared for the Winnipeg Jets power play. I mean, not only were there, their last 4 goals, so they give up a 4-goal lead and then they score 4 power play goals to end the game. But, the 4th goal was a Canadiens penalty that had just expired. The player was just stepping out of the box as the Jets scored that 4th goal. Types of goals they were scoring, other than Scheifele's, backdoor goal that he scored by ricocheting it off Ben Sherratt, which probably there was a little bit of joy in the Jets or on the Jets bench after that happened. But just the quality chances that the Jets were generating for themselves on the power play was something to behold here tonight. Let's bring Kenny in here. I don't want to go too long on the buffet. I want to bring him in. I want to get his take on this entire thing. So if we're going to bring in Kenny, it means we got to bring in his music, and it's the best music in the business. So let's hit it. Kenny, this ends up being one of those nights where there's a ton to talk about. I didn't even talk about the Hoosley men's choir before the game. I didn't talk about, the crowd serenading Matthew Perreault. There was just so much going on in this game. Never mind the Jake Evans stuff from last year, which we talked about before the game, which the players always say, they poo-poo it and say nothing's going to happen with that. And then sure enough, a fight ends up happening at the end of the game, a fight that head coach Dave Lowry says had nothing to do with that. I think we both beg to differ on that one. But I'm just going to, hand you a plate, a fork, and a knife, and I want you to just start wherever you want to start and give me your impressions of this game tonight.
Sure. You get an early wake up for your sarcastic entry. I appreciate it. And it's good for a laugh for all of our people here, but yes, we do appreciate you asking the questions
for
the two of us. Yes, I appreciate you asking the questions for the two of us. Interesting game. I mean, where to begin? I mean, man, oh man, yeah. It's your boy Bruce. Yes, I'm going to grab 2 plates for this trip, I think, to the buffet. Wild game, incredible emotion out of the gate. I thought that pregame ceremony was handled incredibly well. You saw, I mean, again, I wish I had been in the building, but I felt like I got a pretty good glimpse of what things were like in terms of, the Ukraine flag and all, there were some jerseys and things of that nature. People obviously very emotional with both anthems being sung. Obviously, the Jets, it used to be guaranteed win night when the Hoosley Choir got out and sang, and I think their streak was maybe snapped. Was it against Montreal maybe in the playoffs?
Yes.
But overall, they've been pretty impressive there for sure. Jets came out incredibly strong. Obviously, tough start for Sam Montembeault, but again, a lot of those were pretty goals. The collapse was something to behold. It looked like a very, again, especially when you're talking about muscle memory, man, oh man. Given what happened in Denver, most people were wondering if the roof was going to cave in. Yet the Jets found themselves a way to steady themselves and won the game fairly handily. Their power play came through incredibly well, as you said, Sean. I mean, 4 goals, impressive job all around. I'm not sure. I would just beg to differ quickly in terms of your assessment of Marty St. Louis not being prepared. I mean, that last goal, I don't think the Jets have completed the tic tac. We've seen that tic tac toe move before, but not with those players delivering on it. So overall, you're bang on. I mean, the Habs penalty kill I think has struggled often this year, and it struggled again this evening. Speaking of struggling, yes, it's ending up in the chat room. Neil Pionk, another absolutely rough game for Neil Pionk.
Yeah.
Not just the penalties, but he just seems a little bit out of sorts. But we'll get around to that a little bit later on. In terms of Scheifele, I mean, Sean, you were there this morning. I was absolutely blown away. I actually liked what he said. I was absolutely shocked to hear it come out of his mouth. That he would answer the bell and take on all comers if that was what was going to be happening tonight.
He didn't say that.
He said if Jake Evans wanted to go, he would go. So
he'd fight with Jake Evans.
Well, I mean, you think he's gonna? I don't know. What was he gonna? Was he gonna not go if someone else asked him? I mean,
but he definitely didn't say I'm ready to take on.
Sorry. Sorry, I didn't want him to stretch his words, but I thought it was impressive for him to say that he was willing to go if asked, and he did go if asked, and I agree completely with you. We can respect Dave Lowry wanting to diffuse the situation, and we know that Chris Weidman was not on the Canadiens, but let's get real. If you're a newcomer to a team, the best way to ingratiate yourself with that new team is to remember a grudge in the past. Right, Sean? I mean, that's what I saw Weidman doing. On a normal one-on-one, there's no reason to put a player in a chokehold. I'm not sure I agree with Mark Scheifele's assessment either. It was more like a headlock. Yeah. But it was his head that was being locked, so if it felt like a chokehold, I'm willing to give him the benefit of the doubt. Good on him for responding, but the celebration was interesting for sure. Mark Scheifele and Pierre-Luc Dubois joking about the first and last Gordie Howe hat trick, I think was funny. Overall, interesting tilt in a lot of levels. Again, much like Sunday, Sean, not the template the Jets want to use in a game against the Dallas Stars, but if that's winning ugly, the Jets will take it. And I'm going to save. I know this was a long trip to the buffet. I'm going to save all of my Pierre-Luc Dubois servings for the next round to the buffet. That's the appetizer. I'll hand it back to you, and we'll go from there.
Because I'm not done with what you were talking about yet. I have to say.
No, so let's go to that.
Yeah, I want to dig a little deeper into Scheifele's response afterwards, because clearly, everyone was wondering, is the bell gonna be answered? Really, if you take a look at the situation, there really wasn't a lot of people on the Canadiens who you would be sending out to ring that bell that needs to be answered, right? And it's funny if you take a look. So before coming into this game, you and I talked about this in the last Kenny and Renny. I wasn't expecting there to be much. New coach, all of the major players like Joel Edmondson out of the lineup. Joel Armia is not a fighter. Stahl is gone. Corey Perry is gone. Shea Weber, who's a scary individual, is gone. you take a look at this Canadiens team, it does not at all resemble the team that we saw the Jets lose to in the playoffs last year. And without a head coach, that was part of that. Maybe the direction isn't there to make something happen. So I wasn't expecting anything. Now, when I showed up at the rink this morning and started talking with our colleagues out of Quebec who were there,
right,
they thought very differently. They thought that something was going to happen. They actually told me that there was more likely a chance that the Canadiens were going to go looking for retribution with Marty St. Louis behind the bench than if Dominic Ducharme had still been there. So I found that interesting. And now as the day was going on, I kind of wondered if there was going to be more. Now, clearly there was. In the end, there was. But I mean, I don't think it was anything we were expecting. And here's the deal. I saw people debating about this online, but Jake Evans is not a big guy. I think he's in the neighborhood of 170 pounds. His player listing says that he's 6 feet. He's not 6 feet. We saw him come in and walk through the crowd to go stand up or to sit behind the podium. He is not 6 feet. Mark Scheifele is a big man. Mark Scheifele is 6'3", in the neighborhood of 205, 210 pounds. There's a significant size difference between these two. So for Mark Scheifele to say, if Jake Evans is interested in fighting, I'm not worried about, or he didn't say that. He said, I'll answer the bell. Well, of course, the size discrepancy between these two players is it's big. It's really big. And Jake Evans, it's probably not going to work out good for Jake Evans. I'm not saying Mark Scheifele has to go fight the toughest guy.
It's his beef, though. The beef is with Evans, right? So that's why you said he would fight Evans, right? Don't you think?
But the beef exists because of like a what someone could see of a bullying type situation, right? Like no one goes out and expects, if a 6'5" guy goes and runs over a 5'5" guy, no one on the 5'5" guy's team is saying, well, go out and get retribution now, buddy. Like they're trying to even the score is what they're trying to do. Chris Weidman, I don't think was necessarily the choice to do that. To me, it was an interesting situation because if people were expecting fireworks, that was like, someone lighting a sparkler, and waving it around. It was, Scheifele throws one punch. I don't think Weidman throws a punch at all, and they go down to the ice. The interesting part for me is that Scheifele gets up afterwards and gives the Logan Stanley, and we've talked about that in the past, the Logan Stanley wave to the crowd to get them going, and then flashes a big smile at the Canadiens bench. And I had thought, just let that fizzle out, right? Because I can tell you right off the bat, Tim and friends, after I tweeted about this situation, tagged my tweet with that video, and then I started seeing people responding to the video, and like people out of Montreal angry with that response, with what they saw from Mark Scheifele. So I can only think that if you're a Canadiens fan and you take a look at that and you think like, there he is, like smiling and mugging, towards the Canadiens bench after getting away with that. It seemed to me, Ken, to be now. I'm not going to tell people how to celebrate. If that's how Mark Scheifele wants to celebrate, that's how he wants to celebrate. But I'm also not going to tell an opposition team to not take it however they're going to take it. And I just think Mark Scheifele doing that created an opening in the door for the Canadiens to potentially carry that grudge forward, where I think it got snuffed out in the most minor way possible that the Jets could have expected. And yet I think that door is still open now.
Yeah, I mean, it could be open. Sean, and I totally understand where you're coming from, but I mean, Mark is a big guy, but he's not a fighter. So, I mean, I don't think that Mark has to fight a 6'3" guy because he's 6'3". I mean, he doesn't have to fight Ben Sherratt because they're similar in size and stature. I mean, you would be definitely in a different weight class if that's, and that's not what you were saying. I know that, but
yeah,
it's also not the same as having to fight the 5'7" guy. And to me, the much bigger issue with Jake Evans has a history of concussions. He has no obligation to fight Mark Scheifele. So, I mean, if someone wants to stand up for his teammate, fine. If they don't want to, and if they think it's over with, also fine. Again, Mark celebrating at the end, I mean, I don't see it as a big deal. I mean, if someone's offended by it, I'm okay with that too, because that's emotion. But I don't think that Mark was trying to say, I got Chris Weidman, so let's continue this on. I mean, I think he was more making, after the game, kind of making fun, like, I'm not going to be in a lot of fights, especially not a lot of fights that I don't lose. So in a hockey game where I'm feeling emotion and the building's full, he had a little bit of fun. I mean, was it a little excessive? Maybe, but to me, Sean, I mean, we know this because we've been in the building when it's been empty or had half capacity or 250 people. If Mark wants to hear people cheer for him, whether that's for 2 goals or a wrestling match where a couple of swings were taken, I mean, right on. I mean, I have no problem with that. But again, do we know how people are going to react? I mean, you and I think there could be fireworks in Toronto at the end of March based on what happened with Spezza and Pionk on Sandine and all that. But, I mean, we have no idea how it's going to go, right? I mean, it's going to be interesting. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I don't feel overly strongly about it. I think it's something that we definitely noticed. But let's dig into a few of the other juicy topics here this evening.
Okay, I want to do something before we go too
Sure.
far. The disallowed goal by the Montreal Canadiens, absolutely the right play, kicked in. Help me understand this, Ken. I don't get this because you remember last year, and we had a healthy debate about it on Kenny and Renny when Nate Schmidt redirected a goal in off of his foot, and it was clearly he shoots his foot out and it redirects off and into the net. And the explanation is given to me by you and by a lot of people online was that it wasn't a kicking motion because he didn't lift his foot off the ice. And I said, well, if that's not a kicking motion, what's the point of taking kicking out of the game? And the explanation to me was you're allowed to kick as long as you don't lift your foot off the ice, because if you lift your foot off the ice, then it becomes a danger for the players around you. I have no idea what is a goal when it comes to kicking and what isn't a goal. Like, to me, that's it's clearly he clearly kicks it in. That shouldn't be a goal, but I contend to this day I have no idea. And you remember what I'm talking about. It was against the Ottawa Senators. Nate Schmidt, a shot from the point. It's going. He can't get a stick on it, so he kicks his foot out. If you remember it, explain to me what the difference is between that and this play here tonight, because I do not at all understand the idea of what is kicking and what is not kicking.
It's simple. It's a redirection versus a kicking motion. I mean, Gallagher had 2 distinct kicking motions, and you're right. I mean, the second one, his skate is along the ice, so he's in no danger of injuring anyone, but it's still his stick was tied up, so he had no other way to do it but to, that was more of a leg sweep than a kick, but I mean, it was a kick. I mean,
it was a kick. Like,
Brendan Gallagher, the classic moment of, again, you're in the building, but the camera work is amazing. They pan to Brendan Gallagher and he's shaking his head like he thinks it wasn't actually kicked in. There's no way that Brendan Gallagher goes to the room at the intermission and says, "Oh man, that should have counted." Like, maybe you could have called a penalty for having tied his stick up on the first one, but that can't count. It is, and again, it's okay.
It should.
The first kick is okay because if Lehkonen would have hit the rebound in, it's totally allowed. Right? And that's the thing that's crazy, right? It's not like a hand pass where after a kick, the play is live because Hellebuyck made the save, right? So people are wondering, oh, well, they should have just blown it away. Why is this taking so long? Well, it wasn't the first kick that was disallowed, that would have disallowed the goal. It was the second one when he's on the ice and he can't find it with the poker and then he kind of sweeps at it. So, I get it. I understand people are frustrated. I understand some people want those to all count. Because they're trying to get scoring. This is not a great example. There were already 12 goals. So you don't need more offense in that game and you don't need that to count. It shouldn't count.
It shouldn't. This goofball here, Nigel Gaber, who happens to be my cousin, so I feel comfortable calling him a goofball, says, watch soccer if you want to see goals scored with people's feet. I agree with him 100%. I just, when that happened, I was thinking, I was more bothered by the fact, Ken, and I was like, the fact that I'm questioning this in my head right now, whether or not they're going to overturn this and that the NHL initiated a review out of this. It's like, why are we initiating a review? This is clearly a puck kicked in the net, but that Nate Schmidt goal always resonates with me. And I think there is I don't care. I know what you're saying. I don't care what anyone says. That was a kicked in puck by Nate Schmidt last year. And now it's just convoluted the situation for me. I don't know why sometimes people get away with kicking a goal in and scoring and not. It's just, to me, that rule is not clarified. I don't know if there's anyone out there who has clarified it to me. Obviously, a ref must be able to do it somewhere. But at the same time, are they? Because the NHL is initiating a replay on that play because they're not sure at some point and handing it to the refs to confirm.
Yeah, so here's the thing. The reason why it took so long is because you have to make sure that it doesn't hit Gallagher's stick after he made the sweeping motion. What if it goes off of Lehkonen afterward? Or what if it somehow hits the blade of his stick, right? I think that's probably the reason it took longer than most people anticipated. At least that's what I was looking for. And then, they showed it so many times, you're thinking, well, am I missing something? I mean, is there somebody else there? I mean, what's happening here? But to me, I think it was more a matter of they wanted to make sure that there wasn't another Canadiens player that touched it after the second kick was made. But
yeah,
this is a good example. Yes, I mean, that's what I said.
I think he's got
extending the skate is not the same as kicking, though I understand what you're saying. It has the same result.
But if a puck is just sitting there and you launch it by the power of a kick, that's a kick. But if you kick out to redirect a puck and it redirects it off its own force from the redirection, then it's still convoluted to me. I think it's stupid either way. They got to take that out of the game just so that they're not confusing Renny in this situation anymore.
Hey, hang on a second. I mean, you could be opening up a little bit of a can of worms on that one, but you put it on a tee for me. I had to take a swing. Come on.
Well, I guess so, because that's all you've been doing is golfing down there rather than up here working.
Exactly.
And asking questions.
I'm just here on vacation, not working at all. Have you checked sportsnet.ca? Does it look like I'm on vacation?
Listen, you put one on the tee for me. I put one on the tee for you. That's the way.
Okay, buddy. I'm going to have a column written after this, and I also took a buddy to the airport at 5:45 a.m. today, so I'm going overtime with you, man.
I'll go taking a buddy to the airport. That's not. Hey, that's you do that on your own time, Ken.
I did. I did. That's why I did it at 5:45 a.m.
So I wanted to bring something up, but I know you were going to go really, really long on PLD, so I'm not going to bring it up yet. I wanted to bring in Connor Hellebuyck on that because I know that it wasn't the best game for Connor Hellebuyck, but clearly to me, this game changed on a single play.
Oh yeah, for sure.
On the penalty shot awarded to the Montreal Canadiens. Now, Ken, I remember when that penalty shot was awarded, I was thinking to myself, I bet, because you could see the Canadiens struggling on the penalty kill throughout the game, and in that moment, if the ref doesn't call it a penalty shot and evens it up, I think at that moment in the game, the Montreal Canadiens would have actually preferred to have to have sent a jet to the box and then worked on the power play after killing off the 4-on-4, than getting the all for nothing with, and who was it? Remind me who took the
Rem Pitlick.
Yeah, Rem Pitlick against Connor Hellebuyck. I'll take Connor Hellebuyck every single time on that one. But Connor Hellebuyck goes out, makes that stop. The Jets immediately turn around, go the other way, and score. I'll say this, and I think there was a debate last time. There's no such thing as timely saves. Man, oh man, if that's not a timely save, I don't know what is.
Yeah, so here's the thing. I actually disagree with the first part of the premise because the Jets' power play hadn't gone yet. They hadn't scored yet, right? It was 4-4. The Jets' power play hadn't scored. So
hold on a sec. They hadn't scored, but they scored just as time expired on another penalty, and the Montreal Canadiens player was about 2 feet outside the box.
Sure, so they I'm just saying they hadn't been dominant on the power play, even though they had both sides had opportunities. And let's get real. I mean, no flow whatsoever to the game because of the parade to the penalty box. And this wasn't a dirty game, Sean. This wasn't a dirty game where you needed to have all those power plays, right? I mean,
yeah, it was like the Canadiens, where the Canadiens are showed, right? Like, yes, they won 5 straight games, but I'd said on the CJOB pregame show before this that I still
4 in a row. 4 in a row now.
Who?
For you?
3 in a row. 3 in a row.
Okay.
But I'd said on that show that the Montreal Canadiens, I don't care if they've won 5 straight games and they've got all kinds of good feelings. They're still a team that's been mired in a really terrible year. And if you apply pressure, that they're going to break, right? And I think that's exactly what we saw here tonight. The Winnipeg Jets came out right off the bat. They took the Housley bump They took, the bump that came from all the talk about, retribution and everything like that, and they channeled it. And once they got on the Canadiens were on their heels. Next thing you know, it's 4-0, right? Well, then the Montreal Canadiens get their legs under them, come back, and then what happens? The Montreal Canadiens, in a game where there was sufficient evidence to say we cannot be taking any more penalties because this team is slaughtering us with the extra man, they just kept going out and taking penalty after penalty after penalty, and a lot of them were chintzy. So, to me, this was a great example of the Jets leaning on a team that was fragile and breaking them at 2 points in the game. And as they broke them, the goals just poured in. The Montreal Canadiens, for the most part, played a really good game outside of a couple, stretches of hockey. But those stretches of hockey, credit the Winnipeg Jets. They came out and they leaned at the right time. They applied pressure. The Montreal Canadiens broke, and the Canadiens, to me, looked like a veteran savvy team in those moments.
Yeah, and for me, Sean, I would argue that the Canadiens obviously showed they aren't a fragile team, because if they are a fragile team based on where they are in the standings, you lose that game 7 or 8-0, right? You can't get it to 4-4. Now, again, they did crack after it was a 4-4 game on special teams, but
fragile things crack, Ken.
Sure, but what I'm telling you is, if you're really fragile, and Marty, I know you're not saying that St. Louis hasn't had an impact, but because of the impact he's had, they fought back in a game where they would have rolled over previously. That's what I would counter with.
I know what you're saying. I guess what I'm saying is despite the fact that the Canadiens have showed strength as of late, I just think that if you're a team whose muscle memory is that of a team that has struggled the way they are, I mean, they're the second worst team in the league right now.
Sure, yeah, of course.
Team in the league for a while. But what I'm saying is I still think, here, to me, Ken, the perfect example, again, I know it sounds like we have a little bit of a difference on this, but the quality chances that the Jets were able to consistently get time and time again on the power play tonight show to me a team that had no answer, right? There was, at some point, someone's got to pull out, the little chalkboard and come up with a better plan than they had. They weren't able to do that. I don't know if that's Marty St. Louis is not able to execute, but the Winnipeg Jets found a weakness in the Montreal Canadiens and exploited it over and over and over again. It's the same thing as a football team deciding that the other team can't stop the run, and they just run it on them all night. If you can't come up with an answer, that shows a team that is fragile in an area. The Montreal Canadiens have shown strength as of late, but that doesn't mean that it's not a fragile team showing strength in some areas that have allowed them to get by, but it still doesn't mean that you can't exploit that fragility.
Sure, but Scheifele banked it off Sherrod. That was an instinctive play or a cagey play, as Mark Scheifele countered to you. That wasn't a breakdown. Copp's goal wasn't really a systemic breakdown. I don't know. That to me, I know what you're saying. I just don't think that the Jets were whipped.
He walked straight off the boards and had a free shot on the net. There was no one to challenge that shot.
Sure, but I'm not.
It was a simple pass from the defenseman down to the sideboards, and the guy walked in and teed it up on the goaltender. That's about as
great shot, yeah,
but as you can expect.
Sorry, I'm just saying they weren't going tic-tac-toe, banging one-timers the entire power play. They made some nice plays, and Lowry, the last goal by Stastny was a perfect play. By then, the game's kind of out of reach. But sorry, I think.
Yeah, I know what we're saying.
I just don't think that Marty St. Louis is going into the PK meeting and saying, come on, obviously you're going to say you can't give up 4, but I don't know. To me, I don't think that's poor execution for me. I don't think that has anything to do with coaching. But I know what you're saying. Someone should have gone to the board and said, let's get our pressure points down so that those tap-ins aren't happening.
I will say this, someone had asked, I don't have it in front of me right now, but someone had asked, if the Jets win their next game, are they for real? Depending on how they perform in that game, I'm not sure, but let's keep in mind the Jets have a 2-game winning streak. This is, Ken, remind me, is this their second since the beginning of the calendar?
Third.
So this is their third 2-game winning streak, and the most they've strung together since the beginning of January is 2 straight games. The Arizona Coyotes are the last place team in the league, and the Montreal Canadiens are the second last place team in the league. So, and clearly the weaknesses of those teams were on display against the Jets. The Jets are going to have to do this against teams that have a little bit more, gumption and are a little bit more solid before I'm at the stage where I'm, anointing them back and
sure.
heading down the stretcher. Because once again, we have to keep in mind, I've done the math on this. The Jets have room to lose one game a week. If they keep their losses to one game a week, they could make the playoffs down the stretch. But I mean, anything that happened here tonight doesn't mean a lot if they lose their next game against the Dallas Stars. So we got to get into that.
They have to beat the Dallas Stars, right? I mean, they've had 2 chances now. They've gone to overtime twice, but in games where they had a chance to pull within, 4 points, neither time they were able to do so. I mean, yes, they got a point in both those games, and once they had to rally with the goalie out. So sure, it's a good point, but we're going to need to see a little more evidence. I mean,
the one thing I'll say is this Winnipeg Jets team has shown at times this year, like when they're on, holy smokes, are they on. When you show weakness, man, oh man, can they pounce on you. Like the one thing that I think that, and I don't know that there was, there was pressure from both Arizona and Montreal in these games. Like the one thing that it seems to me is like if the Jets can get an edge on someone, they can leverage that edge as good as anyone else. It just seems this year their ability to sustain has been limited because they're able to be broken back, right? Like teams are able to come in and make them look like the team that is discombobulated, not doing things right. So that's what I'm watching for. Someone's asking about, that's what I'm watching for in the next game they play against Dallas. Will we see what we saw here tonight, and a continuation of that, and a push, and the Jets kind of looking like they can, be dominant, or are we gonna have a return to the Jets kind of looking like, well, where are they? Where's the effort on this night? Because that's, to me, the hallmark of this Jets team when they're not on, or when another team is leaning on them and they just don't seem to have any answers. Speaking of dominant, let's get to...
Sorry, hang on. Let's go back to... We didn't really finish up on Hellebuyck. I mean, you talked about the save itself, but I mean...
Sure.
Let's be honest, Sean. I mean, if that penalty shot goes in, Hellebuyck's out of the game, is he not? If that's a 5th goal scored at that point in the game on the penalty shot, does he not get... Did you think he doesn't get pulled?
I don't think he would have got pulled.
Really?
Just because it's too close. And, I mean, it's, again, a penalty shot is an artificial play. I don't think you're...
No, but 5 unanswered. I'm not saying it's his fault. I'm just saying that the teams, like, outside of calling a timeout, I mean, goalie pull, even if you plan to go back with him, I mean... I don't know. I don't think he would have got pulled. I think if he had given up the 5th goal, I think there's a chance he might have been taken out of the game. And I'm not, again, penalty shot is not a great example. But, I mean, things were getting a little bit shaky there. But this is kind of vintage Hellebuyck. I mean, that is not true. Hellebuyck is still among the league leaders in goals saved above average. He still made plenty of saves that he's not expected to. I understand folks have a short memory. I understand folks are disappointed in the raw numbers. But Hellebuyck has not been at a Vezina level. I'm not arguing that. But he hasn't been their problem either. But, average to above average looks different than superhuman. So, and that's what we've been seeing. But, Sean, you've said this countless times, and it's 100% accurate. When Hellebuyck allows a softie or 2, generally speaking, the door gets slammed after that. And there's something to be said for that. I mean, again, would he prefer to give up 2 or fewer in every game? Of course he would. He's a competitive guy. But, I mean, the Jets... Connor Hellebuyck is far from a problem for the Winnipeg Jets, even though, of course, he'd like to reduce those goals. Let's get into Ehlers here before we get...
Did you hear this?
That's not what I heard, no. He said he did not have a timeline, Blue Thunder. He said he was making progress. But what did you see from him in the skates that you were at? For Ehlers.
So I was sick yesterday.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
Morning
skate today?
Morning skate, I was there. But to be honest, I got a little tied up talking with the French media and dug into, the storyline that
we were heading into. Well, based on some of the video we saw, it looks like he's moving around pretty well, right? I mean,
yeah. I mean, he's got to get out of the yellow jersey first, and then he's got to take some bumps. So, I mean, they're not practicing tomorrow. And so they'll have Thursday. So hey, listen, we'll let you know if he's in a yellow jersey on Thursday, then he's not playing on Friday. If he's in a regular jersey on Thursday, maybe there's a chance, but even
Right.
that's probably a stretch, right? You're probably looking at the weekend after that. So, but I mean, hey, let's use this as a transfer into Andrew Copp, because
Sure,
we're,
yes.
excited about what the potential of bringing Nick Ehlers into the game is going to do for this Jets team. How about what Andrew Copp did tonight? Not just scoring, maybe the most important goal of the game. If we talk about last game, we really talked about Blake Wheeler and the goal that he scored being kind of like the linchpin goal of the game. That's what I see coming from Andrew Copp tonight. It was the linchpin goal of the game. But not only that, his head coach said he was going to have a lot of ice time tonight, and sure enough, he did on a penalty kill that once again looked extremely dangerous. I'm blown away by the Winnipeg Jets penalty kill and its ability to create chances. Andrew Copp just part of that. That's a separate issue, but let's get back into Andrew Copp. And were you surprised he was able to have such an effect on the game after being out as long as he was?
No, not at all. I mean, hockey intelligence is something we've discussed with Andrew Copp so often, and I would even argue too. I agree with you, Sean. I think he probably scored the most important goal of the game because of the way the game was tilting. It's the game winner, of course, but I mean,
if
the Jets
is a timely save, then Andrew
yeah,
Copp
of course,
is a timely goal.
They need it. I mean, that was again second unit coming through, also, right? I mean, that's the other part of that. I thought he was excellent in the game, very good in the face-off dot. I thought he made a couple of really smart neutral zone plays, as you mentioned. His penalty killing work was, excellent. And again, if Sunday was a playoff game, Andrew Copp probably would have played. So I mean, I'm not surprised that he had been skating. I'm not surprised that his lungs were there. He played almost 18 minutes, I think, here. Just under 18 minutes. I thought he was excellent in the game. Not a surprise. I mean, he's such an important piece of the puzzle. He really stretches out that. I mean, Sean, we talked about depth or lack thereof so often this year. When Andrew Copp is in the lineup, and if Andrew Copp is on the third line, the Jets have incredible depth. I mean, they weren't getting a ton out of the fourth line today, obviously, and I thought Christian Vesalainen, outside of the backhand kind of partial breakaway, didn't really think I saw a lot from his game. That's a wake up. Hellebuyck not being engaged, come on, man. Come on, Blue Thunder. You can do better than that. And if that's what you think, based on what? I mean, not engaged in what? I mean, not engaged in wanting to win? Have you seen any of his interviews lately? I mean, come on, let's go here. Copp was excellent. Adam Lowry. Let's also transition right to Lowry. There's lots of people in the chat room that were ripping Adam Lowry after a tough start, and he had a tough start. But now, at a time when we've talked about the need for secondary scoring, Adam Lowry is on a bit of a heater for himself. I mean, he's getting to the net, he's getting goals, really good setup for Paul Stastny, multiple point game. As you mentioned, penalty kill rolling. And you can see it. You can see what that means for a team, that when Adam Lowry can provide a physical presence and then give you some offense as well. I mean, it stretched them out and given them some scoring from three lines. And I think it's been impressive to see. And Sean, you know what it's like. I mean, I don't mean you specifically, but when you go through half a season where it's been tough to score, it's tough to get it going. But then when you get one, you kind of are able to get this big, deep breath and exhale, and then you get on a roll. And somebody had asked about the car. It is a Ford T-Bird. It's my father-in-law's car. It is an absolute beauty.
It's like the late 90s version of the T-Bird, right?
It's the old school retro style, yes. But
it's the new retro.
Yes,
it's the last version of it that they made, right?
Yeah, I haven't had the top down yet, though. So, but that's okay. We're working on it.
My first car was a 92 Thunderbird Super Coupe.
Nicely done. Malibu Classic for me. And I am currently driving the new version of the Malibu. And it's a fantastic ride as well.
You fell in love. And this is a true man right here. Kenny will stay true to you at all times. I can't wait anymore. I do want to get to Svechnikov before it's said and done, because
let's go there first, because we didn't give him enough credit on Sunday. We kind of gave him a little quick and easy and moved along.
Okay, start us off. Let's go. What do you got?
Fantastic. I thought he was excellent in the game once again. Smart board play, smart play down low, really good job. So again, people are all, Jets don't go to the net enough. Well, Svechnikov went to the net again and got there and has the redirection, And then what does he do? He wins a battle down low. The puck goes to Dubois. The puck gets over to Nate Schmidt. This would have been your end, Sean, right where your seats are. I thought that Kyle Connor tipped. I mean, again, I know that he didn't, but
I thought he did.
The first time that I saw the shot, it looked like Connor got a piece of it. But again, I haven't seen any video evidence to the contrary. But impressive job, nonetheless, by that line. And once again, I mean, obviously, Mark Scheifele, great one-timer, and he got involved offensively here. Both top two centermen were all over the score sheet, and we saw a lot of the power shifts for Dubois with Connor with Scheifele and Wheeler coming out of penalty kills again today, and those guys were generating quite a bit as well. But Svechnikov, I loved his first period. I thought he was excellent, really involved. And again, I understand that some people didn't like it. And again, I'm not saying that he should have been healthy scratched or seen his role reduced, but I am impressed by the ability of Yevgeny Svechnikov to respond to the benching and the reduced ice time. Because sometimes when you get that chance again, your confidence is shaken, and then you're not able to get yourself going. I am so impressed. And then remember, this is a guy who's trying to establish himself as an NHLer. This is not a guy with 5 years of NHL, 15, 20 goal seasons behind him. I know his underlying numbers have been fantastic, but I think it's been impressive for his ability to get back and click with those guys. Again, and part of that goes back to junior when he played together with Dubois. But Svechnikov's ability to be an impact player as a complementary piece has been essential for the Jets at a time when they were struggling to get much going with that line since Perfetti has been hurt.
You know what? Sorry, I'm just gonna quick detour.
No problem.
Rob Mahoney, we talked about this earlier in the show, but he does kind of bring something up here that made it kind of click in my head. How did people find Scheifele's celebration after he brutalized Wideman? I think that's kind of the weird thing about, we talked about this in the past, the Stanley celebration, and now tonight the Scheifele celebration is like neither of them really got in a fight. Like it wasn't there. Like, what are they celebrating? Do you know what I'm saying? Like that's the weird part about that. Like Scheifele threw one punch and then he fell down, right? No one wins that fight. It's basically a non-fight. And so I guess that's kind of the weird thing is like, we're used to, you and I, from our time as hockey fans, from when we were young, we're used to seeing guys like Bob Probert and Domi throw Chuck Knuckles and like go at each other for like 90 seconds and eat like 17 punches each and then go off and celebrate. Like, I think that's the one thing that maybe he kind of pointed that out. And maybe that's what's kind of has me wondering about these things. It's like, what are they celebrating? Like, those weren't fights. He's not celebrating winning.
They're not celebrating the fights at all.
But then why? Why celebrate after
it's the big win element. I mean, you're out of the game. I mean, both times, both guys are going to the room. That's their last chance. I mean, I think they're just trying to get the crowd going, not because they think they pounded their opponent into some.
From what?
Just be excited. They beat the Maple Leafs. Now you beat the. I mean, the Habs and Leafs both travel well. There's tons of opposition jerseys. Stanley, Sean,
after winning and do this.
Sean. Logan said it. He's got a bunch of buddies at the game. They're from Ontario. It's a special game for him. He just wants people to be excited. Today, again, Scheifele talked about it. These guys struggled when they had an empty building or a half-full building. I got no problem when there's visiting fans in and you want to get your own people fired up. I understand. I agree that when there's not a fight, you shouldn't be going all crazy. But I don't think either one of those guys thought that they pounded their opponent into submission and they wanted to get him going. They're just happy about beating an Original Six team. And I don't think it's like the other time when, even Scheifele caught on camera saying, what's better than beating the Leafs? The Jets aren't going into the room today and saying, you know what, guys? Nothing better than beating the Habs on home ice. I mean, they're 31st in the NHL. So...
yeah. Like Joe from Winnipeg may have it here saying Scheifele wasn't being serious. He was making fun of Stanley. And Kenny's water bottle as well said that was the joke. I think that was a bit of a self-deprecating humor. Celebrating winning a fight that wasn't even a fight. He's joking with his teammates about it. That may be the case because that's what we heard from he and Dubois in the post game. So let's get to that. This is going to be Although I'd like to come back to Svechnikov, but this is just too good of a way to bridge into this. Leighton Jana said this earlier on PLD and Scheifele laughing together at the post-game presser is nice to see for real. I think that this is a huge point. You and I had talked about this on the podcast about, my take on it, that it seemed like in a lot of ways the Jets are a team that wasn't having fun. Pierre-Luc Dubois and Mark Scheifele, with self-deprecating humor, which is now, the chat room has convinced me.
For sure.
I've totally changed that. To me, that's what I think Scheifele was doing when he got off the ice here. When he joked about afterwards, that's probably the last time you're ever going to see him with the Gordie Howe hat trick. I do think that's, the chat room has won me over. I think that's what happened here. And in this situation, I do have to say this, and I wanted to bring this up because there's so many people in our chat room. I think there's a lot of people in Winnipeg who think that there's this adversarial relationship between Mark Scheifele and Pierre-Luc Dubois. I think a lot of people think that Mark Scheifele feels like Pierre-Luc Dubois is pushing him for his job and that there may be some conflict there. If you think that, go to Jets TV and take a look at these guys in their press conference today, because these are two guys who genuinely, completely seem to enjoy each other's company, are having fun, don't mind kind of teasing and needling each other a bit, and yet do it in a way that's extremely respectful, and two guys having fun. I took a look at that press conference, and I thought, this is good. This is good for the Winnipeg Jets because you've got two star players who found their groove. How often, Ken, do we talk about this team not getting everything going at the same time? Well, Mark Scheifele was going tonight. Pierre-Luc Dubois did not take his foot off the gas pedal for the entire night, and both of them seemed genuinely happy with each other about it. To me, I take a look at how those two were conducting each other in that interview, and we're interacting with each other. And I think if I'm a Winnipeg Jets fan, I love what I'm seeing in that moment.
Well, you'd also love what you're seeing in the moment where Pierre-Luc Dubois put on a tee for Mark Scheifele and he ripped home a one-timer, right? Well, I think it might have been 4-on-4 but man, oh man,
and
what a
which
play
is
that
returned
was.
Later for the top shelf rip by Pierre-Luc Dubois.
Right, exactly. Just
Scheifele.
Two unbelievable plays going both ways. And again, I understand people kind of want to look between the lines, but Dubois played on a line with Scheifele and Wheeler for a good chunk of last year when he arrived here. So to think that there's a conflict between the two of them, I don't see that at all. I get it. Mark Scheifele hasn't been pushed for the number one job here since he took over the number one job from Brian Little. So I understand why people might be trying to draw those conclusions, but I don't see that being an issue whatsoever. The Jets are at their best when what we saw tonight. That was the premise behind why the deal was made, where you have two dominant centermen and then you have Adam Lowry in the 3-hole. And there it is on full display. Those three guys playing, close to an optimal level, and other guys supporting the cause. I agree with you. I think it was funny. Making both ways, right? First it was Dubois saying first and last when you asked about the Gordie Howe hat trick.
Yeah.
And then Scheifele gets a little bit of needling back by pointing out when you were trying to get it, you got the shovel out, you were trying to dig a little deeper on Dubois. As journalists, if someone tells you they've made a few tweaks, our natural reaction is to say what tweaks and why. And, again, I think that Pierre-Luc Dubois was being a little bit playful in terms of not wanting to answer. And then Scheifele right away gets on him and says he's using Head and Shoulders. That's funny. That's funny stuff. Good on him. I think it was good interaction for sure. And more importantly, what they did on the ice is basically what really matters. And I also, too, we've said this now for weeks and months, what we're seeing from Pierre-Luc Dubois in terms of his investment emotionally on this hockey team. I know that the line of questioning was, Pierre-Luc Dubois knows exactly what you were thinking when it was 4-4. He knew you were not you, I'm talking about the royal you. He thought the people thought that the Jets were going to collapse like they did against the Colorado Avalanche. And he said, you know what? We're not going to collapse. And shame on you for thinking that, because we were the ones pulling out the secondary comeback. So you know what? That's another great example of a guy who really is engaged on the ice, off the ice. And I absolutely know you. I know one moment in the game that you loved when Pierre-Luc Dubois won a puck battle with Jeff Petrie, and he suckered him into taking a high sticking penalty, and then he tried, and then he couldn't help himself from grinning afterward. But he wanted to make sure the ref didn't see it. That's classic Dubois. You know what? I'm in a puck battle with you. I'm stronger than you. Your stick rode up. And then, did his head snap back a little bit? He for surely caught him. And this is not a guy who's faking or, looking for something that wasn't there. There was contact. But part of that's the one part of Pierre-Luc Dubois' game that does not get nearly enough credit. I mean, yes, I understand he takes a lot of minor penalties, but you'll take the give and take because of how many penalties he's drawn. And that's the other part. We don't talk enough about what the Jets are missing with not having Nikolaj Ehlers in the lineup. Not only do they miss their one-man zone entry machine, Nikolaj Ehlers was among the league leaders in penalties drawn. So now you don't have that speed factor drawing penalties. Dubois has taken that torch and run with it and been one of the best in the league at drawing penalties. And most of it is from physical and emotional engagement.
T-Will's back. T-Will's all over me. So I'm going to jump into this, and I'm going to say what impressed me most about Pierre-Luc Dubois tonight was I think that when the Winnipeg Jets jumped out to start the game, a lot of that had to do with Pierre-Luc Dubois driving the engine. When the Winnipeg Jets kind of fell asleep and the Montreal Canadiens started fighting their way back into that game, go back and look throughout that time, Pierre-Luc Dubois never shuts off. Now, the Jets sag in that moment, Pierre-Luc Dubois does not. And that was what impressed me most because Pierre-Luc Dubois came out hot, he stayed hot, and he continued hot. And this goes to the point that you were making and people like T. Will were making and people in the chat room when I called out Pierre-Luc Dubois. I'm sorry, I don't want to say I called him out. I think I said, I don't have any problem at all with what I said because I think I said exactly what Pierre-Luc Dubois was thinking to himself. And you know what? I think I've got proof of it from what he said earlier today here. But Pierre-Luc Dubois did tonight what Pierre-Luc Dubois can do at his very best, to your point. He can draw penalties. He can go around and he can create havoc. He can set plays up. He can score. This is a guy who at the very top of his game can do it all. And I think we all know that. So if you go back 3 games when he'd only got 1 point in his last 6 games, and I say Pierre-Luc Dubois, and I get it. People are saying, leave the guy alone. He's doing his best. He's trying hard and all that kind of stuff. The Winnipeg Jets, I'm telling you right now, are not going anywhere unless Pierre-Luc Dubois contributes on the scoreboard. What has happened in this last little stretch that we're talking, and there's hope in the Winnipeg Jets? Well, he's exploded. 3 points tonight, 2 points the night before, 2 points the night before, since he went on that streak, since I said if the Winnipeg Jets are going to go anywhere, they need Pierre-Luc Dubois to jump up into the play and get stuff done. He's got 7 points in 3 games. He gave the Jets a chance to beat the Colorado Avalanche by helping them jump out, getting 2 points on the first 2 goals, helping them jump out to a lead that, they blew, but he gave them a chance against maybe the best team in the league in that game by playing well. Then he comes out and affects the next game as they win, and tonight is huge, key, first star of the game, did absolutely everything as they beat the Montreal Canadiens. So there you go. This to me, I know T. Will wants to rip on this. He's saying ridiculous stuff about me suggesting he should be traded because, I said that. That's exactly what I said.
No,
this to me drives home the point of exactly what I was saying. This is what you need from Pierre-Luc Dubois. It's not enough just to go out and play really hard all night. You have to go out and you have to not only keep goals from happening, but you have to score. You know who agrees with that? Pierre-Luc Dubois. You know how I know? Because Pierre-Luc Dubois, to the point you're making, Ken, made tweaks. He went out and changed his game to try and get more offense and affect more offense, and it's working. He said, I asked him, your game never dropped. It didn't look like your game dropped off, but what have you done to kind of add that offensive element back into the game? And he did do something. Did he tell us? No, it's a secret. He doesn't want to tip his hand and let everyone know that. But Pierre-Luc Dubois went out and made changes. Why? Because he realized he needed to do more. He needed to get points. my point from that show back then stands. This is exactly what the Jets needed from him. It wasn't enough for him to just be a good player who wasn't putting up points. You need more, especially when you're on a line with a guy like Kyle Connor. Pierre-Luc Dubois right now is the Winnipeg Jets' best player, and he's the Winnipeg Jets' best player because he can, stir up a bee's nest, because he can draw penalties, because he can win puck battles, but most importantly because he's contributing offensively on the scoreboard and allowing the Jets to win these games.
Yeah, and what he's doing more, Sean, is shooting more. And that's what we've seen in all 3 of those games. 6 shots on goal today, 8 attempts. I mean, he's all over the score sheet. He's all over the... Again, he played great. But he could have had more tonight, right? I mean, he had all kinds of grade A chances again. And that's the thing with Dubois. He's not just creating... These aren't just shots coming from the blue line. He creates so many grade A chances, and he's able to do it at 5-on-5. What have we talked about all year long, Sean? Jets became too reliant as a rush team. Dubois scores occasionally on the rush, but he scores most of his goals around the blue paint, and he's got all kinds of scoring chances from there. And again, I think he gets to 30 this year, but I also think that because of the high volume of chances created that are of that great quality, I think he can be a point-per-game player. I totally agree with Comet there. I asked his junior coaches about it when I did my big feature on him when he arrived in Winnipeg, when he was in quarantine, and I still think that's when you're going to see we're seeing the maturation right in front of us, but that's when Dubois goes from 60 to 65 point player to 82 point game player. And again, it's a lot of pressure to be putting on a 23, almost 24-year-old, but that's because of the potential that he has and the ability that he has to take his game to that next level. The Jets' ability to find a room for him on the power play, I think he's going to continue to produce there, but it's to me, the reason why I think he can get to 35 to 40 eventually is because of his ability to generate high danger chances at 5-on-5. That's a skill that not a ton of players have, especially in that body type and the physical side of it, the power forward side to go along with the skill.
So I think I hit on what it is, or a result, the result of what he's doing when I asked him a question. I just feel like because the way I asked the question is, it seems like the path to the net is a lot clearer for him in the last couple of games. Like, it seems like he's got that edge and he's just able to get straight in. You'll notice there's a couple times he's just skated in off the wing, and it's not like he's busting his butt to get ahead of the guys. He's just skating right in and getting shots. Like, the scary thing about Pierre-Luc Dubois is over these last 3 games, he's had a lot of opportunities that he hasn't cashed in on. Like, he's creating a ton of chances for himself. Now, it's interesting because I was talking to Kevin Sawyer after the game. He had an interesting theory. I hope he doesn't mind that I share this. He probably, no, you know what? I didn't get permission to share, so I'm not going to do it because he may want to save that for his broadcast. But I think we're seeing something. I think we're seeing a freeness that he's able to get down the ice. Whatever he has done, I think that's part of it. I think it's something that he's added to his game. And boy, does that make you dangerous. If you are streaking down the ice and you're a big man, you get a shoulder on someone, the fact of the matter is a player like Pierre-Luc Dubois, you are not going to catch that. So that is where we're seeing Pierre-Luc Dubois. He's absolutely phenomenal. I want to back things up before we move on from this,
sure,
and talk about Svechnikov, because I honestly do think that Evgeny Svechnikov has a little bit of a role to play in this. Never mind a little bit of a role. I think he's got a decent role to play in this. I think there's a comfort level that exists between he and Pierre-Luc Dubois. Paul Marie said it off the beginning of the year. Yeah, they played in junior. It doesn't mean it translates to the NHL level. We've seen enough instances so far this season of it working between those players to take away from it that what they had in junior is working at the NHL level. And I just wanted to say this about Evgeny Svechnikov. I think you're entirely right, Ken, about the idea of him starting the year up on that line, having success, getting taken off that line, and how your confidence may be affected by that. I think we've seen that. There was a couple times before this that they've moved Evgeny Svechnikov back up into that spot, and that he hasn't clicked right away, and that they've moved him back down. I do think his confidence was affected by that. But given the opportunity here at this stage, I do think that he's back to clicking. I think there's something about him that allows for the best version of Pierre-Luc Dubois. I've said in the past, I think Pierre-Luc Dubois has pulled out maybe the best version of Kyle Connor that we've seen. I'm convinced, and the Cole Perfetti lovers are maybe going to hate me for this comment, but I think when Connor and Pierre-Luc Dubois and Svechnikov are on the ice, and Svechnikov is at the top of his game, I think the key to that is the best version of Pierre-Luc Dubois is unlocked. And I just have to say, bravo to Evgeny Svechnikov for starting the year the way he did, making it through, going up to the press box, losing that opportunity in a way that maybe he didn't deserve to lose it, and kind of refining his game. Another thing I want to give him huge credit for, Dave Lowry, when asked about Evgeny Svechnikov before the game, says, is asked about him and says, well, he needs to get to the blue paint. If you look where he's had his success, he needs to go there. It's been one of Dave Lowry's major themes. Well, what happens? Svechnikov starts off the scoring in the game right away by going exactly where the coach says he has to be. If you're not going to get rewarded for that, I don't know what a player like him has to do to get rewarded. Absolutely phenomenal job there. And here's the other thing that we need to touch about this. We haven't talked to Evgeny Svechnikov about how he feels about what's happening with his home country and in Ukraine. We don't know his take on this, but all I do know is, as a Russian player standing on that bench when Husley came out saying, and all the Ukrainian flags were being waved around and they were singing the Ukrainian anthem, I don't know what that moment would have been like for Evgeny Svechnikov, but I can only imagine that there would have been a degree of discomfort to that. And that was something that he would have had to have overcome in this game. And he walks out and is the guy who gets things started for the Winnipeg Jets. You were talking about the confidence being shaken. I think it was. But what I'm seeing from Evgeny Svechnikov lately is not just him playing good hockey, not just him bringing out the very best version of Pierre-Luc Dubois, but him showing a level of mental toughness that you have to give him credit for down the stretch here in how he's been able to play his game.
Oh, incredible. And this started in the summer, Sean. I mean, let's not kid ourselves here. You want to talk about adversity. Evgeny Svechnikov talked about it earlier, about the journey for him and his brother, right? I mean, getting to the NHL, parents working multiple jobs, sleeping on the floor. I mean, if you're a first-round draft pick and you have to take an AHL deal to try to get yourself back into the NHL, I mean, I understand. I mean, I reported it at the time, but I mean, it was always going to be, once he was healthy, he was going to try to get himself a two-way contract or whatever. But to come into a camp where you basically have to earn a job to get a contract at the NHL level and then try to stay there, and then once you think you're playing well, you get put on a different line, and then you got to work your way right back up. I mean, man, oh man. I am incredibly impressed by what he's doing, and that's the other part. You got to keep doing it. You know what? If you're in a situation like Evgeny Svechnikov is in, you're always on a tryout, right? I mean, that's part of the deal. I mean, he's going to be an RFA at this year. I can't imagine that he doesn't stick with the Jets based on what we're seeing from him. But man, he's done an incredible job this year and coming back from injury. This guy's had tough injuries in his career. And again, people also forget, too, that when he got his knee bumped or banged up in that Washington game, that was a big blow for him, Sean, right? He felt very fortunate because when it happened initially, he thought it might have been blown out again. And now you're thinking, well, what about my career? I mean, he's lucky he only missed a couple of weeks, but his ability to come back from difficult challenges has been impressive to watch. And, we've talked all year about, I mean, he doesn't share the personality the same way he did when he was mic'd up, of course. Maybe that comfort level comes as things go forward here and he gets more comfortable. But, I mean, this is a guy who is loved by his teammates. He's obviously shown that he can get through tough times. And he's been an important part of this team this year. And for a team that needs complementary pieces, he's been a very impressive one for me.
we should shut her down here, Ken. We're almost to the end here. I'm going to leave this on this note because I've seen, and this is going to be a place that we're going to have to take this conversation again, because it was starting to look at the beginning of the year like, boy, oh boy, locking down Pierre-Luc Dubois was going to be a very expensive proposition. Then when he slowed down a little bit, it started to look like maybe this was going to be a little bit more affordable. He keeps doing what he's doing right now. This is going to start to get really, really expensive again if he keeps doing what he's doing. But I will say this, in my conversations with members of the French media and some guys who are really, really plugged in, who I always check in with when they're in town, who I checked in with quite a bit last year when I was covering the Canadiens during their playoff run. I'd asked about the word out of Quebec and what the expectation was on whether or not Pierre-Luc Dubois would sign here in Winnipeg. Ken, we know how you feel about it. We know you're calling it and saying that he's going to be signing here. When I asked my French colleagues about Pierre-Luc Dubois signing in Winnipeg and whether or not they thought he would do it, their response was, why not? His family is here. He seems to like the city a lot. He's playing his heart out. He's showing that there's a role for him on this team. So if you want to hear the idea that Pierre-Luc Dubois could be doing exactly what we saw him do tonight for a number of years here in Winnipeg, I think that there's good news on that front. Just know that they're probably going to have to pay quite significantly for it. Last thing I want to say before we go, Ken, is there's got to be something, because we've got the same mic that we use, but someone said earlier on in the chat here, and I started, so maybe it's around here, but here we go. Rob Mahoney says the arena's so quiet, lawnmower crew must be watching the show. The machine that's out here that makes all the noise has been out here the entire time. If we're not picking it up, there's some kind of weird way that the noise collects itself at the top of the bowl and it's coming through your mic. Because my mic, I'm not getting anything out of it, or that's at least what it seems like from the crowd anyway. So something to chew over going forward. Well, yeah, Phyllis is right. It's going now. Anyway, thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. That was another great show. Tons to talk about. Now, there's a bunch of stuff we didn't even get to. Yeah.
Just a reminder on schedule. You got to do a quick merch hit. But again, this week, because I'm gone in Arizona here, no long form show on Thursday. So we'll be back Friday post game. That's our next show. And again, as always, thanks for the support, folks. Happy to report the first 2 birdies of the season have been recorded.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Well, I'll talk to you all in September if that ever even happens to me. Kenny is right. I got to show off the merch here. Let me get this comment off the screen before I do so. Yeah. So if you haven't got your Kenny and Renny merch yet, just know you can go to www.shopsportsnet.store. We got the mugs. We got our Wake Up mugs, Wake Up water bottles, Wake Up T-shirts, just your generic Kenny and Renny logo T-shirts, Sean's headband stuff. We're working towards bringing in hats and Sean's headbands specifically. Go check it out. We really do appreciate the support that we do get from everybody, and we feel like we've got our merchandise, after a lot of hard work and chiseling, we feel like we've got our merchandise down to a much more comfortable price point for everybody. Never mind the fact that if you were one of the original people to buy into the Kenny and Renny shirts, you should have 15% off at the Sportsnet store to spend. And if you're going to spend it, well, you should probably spend it on Kenny and Renny merch rather than Steve Dangle merch, which is the only other stuff available there. So thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. Like Kenny said, no long form this week. And Ken, one thing we do have to do, we have to get back to giving away our ice tickets as the season goes on here. So we'll get into that. A little late for us to work on it now, but let's work on a schedule and get back at it. Thank you so much for joining us, everybody. We are excited to do this with you all over again on Friday after the Jets play the Dallas Stars.